As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equations.
Control me! I'm gonna smash you to You can't make me do anything like Chris!
Hello and welcome to Unequal. My name is Dave and I'm one of the two hosts of this shallow podcast.
Shallow? Rude. And I'm Rich, and I'm the other host of this shallow podcast. Think of me as Alfred to Dave's Batman. He's out crime fighting every night, and I'm really good at making his dinner.
It's true, you are. The premise of Unequal Sequel is very simple. We ask our guests their best ever sequel, their worst ever sequel, and finally their dream sequel.
And of course, we'll quite often drift off and talk about other things, like movies in general, or sometimes just life.
And sometimes we do like to drop big fat spoilers for some movies you maybe haven't seen yet. So if we mention one of those films and you don't want it ruined, how about you just skip that bit, go and make yourself a cocktail, non-alcoholic, alcoholic, whatever you want, come back, and then it'll all be over. Because on today's episode, we are joined by Al Horner.
Al is a brilliant freelance journalist who you will also hopefully know as the presenter of the Perfect Script Apart podcast. He has some brilliant guests on there. He also is the editor of the Script Apart magazine as well. So go and check that out too.
We are very excited to sit down with Al and chat all things sequels with him.
These are Al Horner's Unequal Sequels. Enjoy!
Can you think of the first sequel you got excited about?
I can, yeah. Again, I'm pretty sure that this will have crossover. Someone else will have also thought about this.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Aladdin, Return of Jafar. Pretty certain that'll have been.
It has come up.
Yeah.
It's
It
been
has
reasonably
come up.
popular, yeah. I think maybe that's our age demographic.
I feel like it might be, yeah.
Is that a positive reaction? Like to
Yeah, it kind of
do you
is.
hold good memories?
I do, yeah. I mean, like, my guy Iago, who I seem to remember being kind of inexplicably the lead of that film. I guess maybe he was one of the only, like, I mean, again, it's been a good while, but maybe he was one of the only voice talent who kind of came back, because obviously Robin Williams didn't. Yeah, I have certainly good memories of it, insofar as, like, I was just obsessed with Aladdin, and then when there was more Aladdin, I was like, sequels, you say, as a concept? Awesome,
Yeah.
Let's do that. I liked that thing. Just hook it into my veins for more. Let's go.
Was it? I think Return of Jafar was straight to video, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. Well, I definitely had it only on video, and I feel like I would have some sort of memory of going to the Aldershot multiplex. I can't remember what it was called, and I would have experienced it, while navigating the incredibly sticky floors of that cinema that I kind of went to when I was growing up. So yeah, it definitely must have been only video, I think.
Do you have any memories of watching it for the first time, or is it completely blank?
I have memories not of the actual kind of story or any, plot, anything like that. But what I definitely can remember, there are kind of sensory memories attached to it, like me trying to get as physically close to my TV screen as possible, like borderline my nose touching the screen, just to kind of like soak up as much Aladdin as possible. As an owl, I'm looking out for other owls who I can relate to as a child.
Brilliant.
There weren't very many. There was like Alan Shearer, I suppose, who was the closest like owl in the cultural zeitgeist. So I felt like quite a good degree of kinship towards Aladdin, and I wanted. I just remember being sat on the floor on my carpet, just inching closer and closer and closer in a sort of like cross-legged fashion until I was my mum was like, no one else can see the screen out. Move back. Yeah, so that's about all I can remember of Return of Jafar, in which Jafar did indeed return.
My little boy does exactly the same thing. He's like, and you can tell when he likes a movie because he excitedly kind of jumps a little bit closer to the screen.
Yeah.
Until he's like right in front of it, and you're like, George, you make a great door, but a rubbish window.
That is such a classic dad joke as well.
It's such a. My dad used to say it to me, so yeah, just use it for my kid now.
Yeah, but you're massive. You must have.
I wasn't massive when I was a little kid.
I bet you were like 6'2" when you were like 8.
No. About 15, I think I shot up. Like,
Okay. I'm still waiting for my shut up. Was Return of Jafar before the period you knew movies could get rubbish?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I just thought like, I think I was too young to appreciate that movies could be bad, and that certainly sequels by definition like began with almost an uphill struggle to not be bad. Yeah, I was definitely kind of pre that realization.
I kind of missed that era in my life of knowing that just everything's wonderful, everything's rainbows and glitter, and whatever you put in front of yourself, it's going to be brilliant. And I don't know when it changes. I don't know. I can't remember the film that destroyed my life, but like you, Return of Jafar holds really good memories in my head, and I can't bring myself to rewatch it just in case it's not good. Because I remember the day I got it. I was so excited about it. It was in the little drawer in W.H. Smith's.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm getting Return of Jafar today. And like, Aladdin was such a good film. Probably one of my favourite Disney films. Up there with probably Lion King. I went and saw Aladdin a few times, I think. But it was just, magic. Even the song, I can't remember any of the songs. I can't remember who returns. Robin Williams definitely returned. Like you, I can't remember the plot, but the parrot definitely does come good, and then bad, and then good, or something
like that. It's ringing a bell, yeah.
Somehow he escapes from the lamp. Rich, do you have any recollection of Return of Jafar?
I don't think I've ever seen it. I know I should really watch it because loads of people pick it as their first sequel memory, but I don't think I've ever seen it. No, it doesn't stick in my memory whatsoever.
Maybe they should do Aladdin 3. The Jafar has returned again. Let's just keep it coming back.
I don't want to ruin this, but there is already an Aladdin 3, and it's called like Prince of Thieves.
Really? Wow.
And Robin Williams came back for that one. I've never watched it.
Wow, that's crazy.
But we could have an Aladdin 4. There's no way they could have stopped at 3. But there was a TV series, I think, maybe.
Was there?
Oh, this is Disney. They, milk everything.
Well, we're talking a couple of days after announced the what was it? The live action remake of Moana, a film that came out like seemingly like in my brain like a year ago. So maybe we're due for the live action Aladdin remake of the animation came out like 3 years ago. We're probably due the animated sequel to there's some sort of configuration here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we should.
I can't believe they're doing a live action Moana. Really?
The Rock's desperate. This is how I feel. He needs a big win under his belt.
He can't be. How are they going to do that though? He's got like dancing tattoos in Moana.
Well,
Like,
I don't know.
It's going to look ridiculous.
That's not the Rock's problem.
He's going to be Maui.
Wow. Okay. This sounds bad already.
It does seem a bit quick to turn around a film from a classic animated film to a live action ones. Normally, like we're getting Little Mermaid this year and stuff like that. I'm surprised they haven't done a Return of Jafar live action.
Yeah.
I mean, Will Smith could do with a win.
Yeah, I'm game. Let's go.
Guy Ritchie will come back and direct another one. I think Guy Ritchie's actually directing Hercules, the live action.
Yeah, this is ringing a bell. Yeah.
Everything I'm saying to you is confusing you, Rich. I can tell.
Wow. I was just like, because he did the live action Aladdin, didn't he?
Yes, he
Guy
did.
Ritchie, and it was rubbish. I'm not. It's not just me, right? That it was bad.
It had elements of being rubbish, yeah. I mean, it still has the songs.
Yeah, that's fair.
With
But
added
then-
rap elements. Because Will
Exactly.
Smith and because, you got to connect with the kids.
Of course.
Is
Yeah,
that why it ended with
absolutely.
DJ Khaled?
I think that's
Bang on the end.
an attempt at representation. I really feel like it's saddening me to say, but yeah, because obviously the original, I haven't gone back to Return of Jafar, but I have gone back to Aladdin, the original, and while like it will forever have a place in my heart, and without wanting to open too many cans of worms here, like I'm kind of the opinion that you have to kind of treat a lot of stuff like a time capsule, and okay, like basically like the original Aladdin is capital P problematic. Like it does not have a great track record in terms of representing that era, that region, and sort of like it's a bit of a kind of mess in terms of like its approach to race and all sorts. However, that said, like I think like the kind of the remake tried to course correct a lot of that stuff, but it's got quite a lot to do. And yeah, so I think some of the yeah, there were some decisions made there that you can see they were made with good intentions, but they didn't necessarily execute them very well.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair to it, it's better than the Lion King remake, which was just lifeless.
Well, however, though, I'm very much looking forward to you guys, tackling the impending Lion King sequel directed by none other than Barry Jenkins.
I know, right?
I can't. Yeah, I'm sort of really intrigued by it. I'm super intrigued by that.
But that's not set on Lion King 2 animation sequel, is it? Simba's Pride or whatever it's called.
I don't think so. I think it's just an original. I think
they're doing an original story. Hopefully,
Okay.
the lions have more going on with their faces, because the lions in the Lion King, let's call it remake, whatever you want to call it, because it's basically all VHS.
Yeah.
They look bored throughout.
It's because lions don't have human expressions. So if you make the lions realistic, you miss out on the expressiveness of the character. And
Yeah, but
therefore
you've
the
gotta make it
lions just
fun.
end up looking bored. It's like, oh, my dad's dead. I'm bored. Like, it's like...
What is your best sequel ever?
All right, this was hard. I really deliberated over this. My best sequel is The Matrix Reloaded.
Okay. And why is that? Why is it your best sequel ever?
Well, I'm sure like loads of people are listening in and they're like, no, they said the best, because so many people seem to have like a real bone to pick with this movie.
Yeah.
So, like, I know it's a really popular thing to say, like, such and such a film has only grown more relevant with time, and etc. etc. But I genuinely have found that my relationship with The Matrix Reloaded, a film that, like many, kind of left me a bit mystified when I went to see it for the first time as like I think I was about 15.
Yeah.
But yeah, over the course of like the decades since, I have only come to appreciate it as a story in its own right, as like a sequel that comments on the idea of sequels, as a sequel that kind of like challenges everything about the first film and about your relationship with the first film. And to me, it's just everything about it has kind of grown more interesting. Like, as time has gone on and as Hollywood has gone in the direction that it has gone in terms of the sort of rise of the sort of superhero films and all that sort of thing, it's also kind of fascinating, everything we know now about the Wachowskis and, like where their lives and careers went to. Like, it's just fascinating to me that there's so much to read in this movie, basically. And yeah, excited to get into it with you guys.
I'm excited because Dave famously changes his mind. Like guests can very easily change Dave's mind. So I'm interested to see how you change Dave's mind on this movie, because he's not a fan, right?
Not a fan. Not a fan. We'll get into that. Let's go back in time a little bit. Let's build towards the big end. You were 15. It came out in the cinema. You must have seen the Matrix from '99.
Oh, like a billion times. Like, there were I think the first two DVDs that my family owned were like Austin Powers and The Matrix, two cinematic classics right there. And I think like some films just find you at the right time in your life to sort of serendipitously like hit you and change you on just like a molecular level. And The Matrix was absolutely that for me. Like, I don't know, I must have been 12 or something, like, and I was just young enough to I was kind of ready to sort of have the existential questions posed to me that film posed. And it just rewired my brain. It introduced me to the idea of science fiction as like a kind of gateway drug into questions about the world and about existence and all this sort of thing. And it was just a type of filmmaking that I hadn't seen before, and a type of filmmaking that I think, like, American cinema really hadn't seen before, or at least not in this configuration. So I was totally obsessed, and there are few things that I have looked forward to more in my life than two Matrix sequels shot back to back. Like, I remember I was counting down the days, weeks, and months. I really couldn't wait for the day where I could go see Reloaded. And I saw it on the first day, went with a bunch of friends to Basingstoke View Cinema, I think it was. And I remember everything. Like, it's such a kind of formative memory that I remember, like, I remember the exact sort of weather. I remember, like, yeah, I remember getting the train. I remember being outside like the train station and sort of waiting for my friends and just being like, I was levitating. That's how excited I was for it, because the first film had been, I don't know, it was like it had just been such a fundamental part of my like early teenage years, and here was the next installment in that. So yeah, I was really, really excited.
And you watched it, and then you came out of it, and how did you feel afterwards initially? I know you built 10 years now, it's a great sequel to you, but that initial first watch, were you confused? Were you underwhelmed a little bit? Disappointed?
I was really confused, and I probably was a bit underwhelmed, but I was also sort of like viewing it very much as like, well, a lot of the pieces of the puzzle, like they'll be answered in part three, and sort of by the time that third film has come out, I'm sure like it'll feel more complete, and I'll have like a better sense of what they were trying to do here. So I was a bit perplexed, and I was a little bit kind of like yeah, you sort of expect a sequel, and especially, you know, coming off the back of like a decade in cinema, the 90s, in which like the approach to sequels was very much like one of doubling down. You know, you liked that, here's more. The Matrix Reloaded was not interested in doing that, and it was kind of like it challenged almost every aspect of the first film. It challenged why you connected with that first film, and like the undoing. I mean, I don't want to speculate too much, like on the behalf of the filmmakers as to what their motivations were, but it was really interesting. Like at school, I remember the people who kind of like, there was a real spread of people who loved The Matrix, who I kind of grew up with, and there was like a slightly like jockey crowd, I suppose, who also really loved the movie and would apply words like badass to it, and like the things they loved about it were very much like, you know, the lobby kind of shootout scene, which I loved as well. And like, but I think like they connected to it as a piece of action cinema. And I don't want to sort of speculate too much, but like it's there's a reading of Reloaded as kind of the Wachowskis looking at how the Matrix was co-opted from the start and going like, well, we don't feel very comfortable with this as people who are kind of like, you know, they are political radicals. They are like, they're radicals in every sense. And there's a reading of this film as like a kind of a rebuke and a sort of self-reflection on like, what film did we make, and why has some of the reaction to it and some of its success made us feel uncomfortable? Like, did we accidentally glorify things in that story? Did we accidentally fall into like filmmaking kind of tropes in that film that we no longer feel comfortable with? And I think like all of that stuff, when you are kind of a 15-year-old kid expecting like more of the same, it is kind of underwhelming. It is kind of disorientating. And it really has taken, it took me about sort of 10 years, maybe 15 to go from that feeling to one of kind of, well, the kind of arc for me was like when I saw the third one, I actively didn't like the third one. And then I kind of went on this kind of like, I kind of got caught up in the sort of derision of it all, I suppose. And I'm not sort of particularly proud to say that, but like after a while, like I kind of on just watches at home over the years, as it kind of stuck with me, I couldn't work out why I couldn't just sort of like park those movies the way that I kind of was able to park like the Star Wars prequels. It's just not movies for me. I couldn't let the Matrix movies, I just couldn't let them go, and I just had to understand them. And it was over the course of like, I remember that it was about 10 years later that I did a rewatch, and it all finally clicked for me, and I sort of began to really not just sort of like accept these movies, but sort of understand them as doing something really, really, really revolutionary.
I did something similar. I kind of did a rewatch not too long ago, and I did come out of it going, do you know what? Reloaded isn't as bad as I thought. I mean, the third one's still virtually unwatchable for me, but but the second one, the Reloaded, I do think definitely isn't as bad as I'd thought it was. And actually, what you've said about the Wachowskis really makes sense, because I did come out of it and go, do you know what? It's like they took all the bits that people loved from The Matrix and went, we're not doing any of those. We're not doing any of those bits. And so it makes complete sense so that, you know, what you've said, to say like, oh well, actually maybe they didn't like the reaction to it, and that kind of, that again, thinking about them as people, that does make sense, absolutely. I'm still not sure I completely I love it. I'm not sure I love the first one, to be honest. Like,
Oh, wow.
I think I'm the only person on the planet who didn't love the first Matrix movie.
Yeah, that's unforgivable.
Well, I can give you myself.
They're all better than the fourth one.
We'll get to that. What's
I
your
actually
sell then,
love
Al?
the fourth one, and again, the fourth one has only enhanced my appreciation of this film. So Reloaded, like having this was the first time I've gone back to Reloaded since watching Resurrections, and I really, really liked Resurrections. Again, as kind of like a kind of commentary on the nature of sequels and the nature of reboots. And obviously the kind of context around that movie was The Matrix 4 was happening one way or another. The studio made that quite clear. And gosh, I really hope I'm getting this right. Lana Wachowski rather than Lily. I hope I've got that the right way around. That it was one of the sisters who kind of went ahead without the other. Yeah, she basically like decided, well, like if it's gonna happen, I'd rather make it myself and make it a film that kind of continues down the path started by Reloaded, that like kind of like gestures towards the sort of action spectacle that people wanted from a Matrix sequel all those years ago, but really is kind of like, it's quite focused in on a question that like is really missing in a lot of like blockbuster movie making today, which is like what's the fight for? And like the kind of running thread across these sequels that I think the Wachowskis put like more and more kind of emphasis on and dedicated more movie real estate to, that kind of edged out the action stuff and kind of left a lot of people annoyed, was, you know, it's like love and it's people and it's community and it's like, you know, now people, okay, as a good like illustration of this for me and why it's interesting and why for me it works. The scene in Reloaded that a lot of people use as a kind of like stick to bat this movie with, it kind of like, for a lot of people, they talk about it as being the moment when they were in the cinema, then when they were like, what's going on here? There's this kind of rave scene early on, which is kind of intercut between like Neo and Trinity having sex. And like for a while, I did kind of like buy into that as like, okay, it's really long and it's kind of ridiculous. But like, you know what? After like all these years of like, sort of, I do find like a lot of superhero cinema today, there's just, it feels so weightless because there's not, basically, I think a lot of these movies that come out today would actually really benefit from having a scene like that shows kind of like community, that shows love. Like what's it all for? What are you fighting for? What is like the point of these stories if you don't see like, you know, actually, is it just like without something that kind of like tethers the whole story to like actual people who experience actual joy and connection together? Like it's just CGI bashing around and you never really see the real people who the kind of like saving the world actually impacts, who it's all for. So yeah, I kind of really like even that scene, which again is still kind of like, it was at the time parody.
Because I used to hate it, and you're like, I get it now. What are we fighting for? Yeah, okay, keep going. Good.
Oh well, okay, I'll carry on this thread because I like, believe me, this spiel has come out of the pub a good few times because I've had many people to kind of like try and sell this movie on. So to me, like Reloaded is best viewed as like the first film is such like an archetypal like hero's journey. So the story of Neo is the story of Harry Potter. It's the story of Luke Skywalker. It's the story of like every superhero origin story. Normal kid plucked from obscurity who goes on receives a call to arms and has to kind of like step up and save the day, take on this incredible destiny. That is like the narrative template it's the kind of go-to narrative template for Hollywood. And you know, not just Hollywood, like a lot of pop culture, a lot of literature, like dates back to kind of this kind of journey, this template. And there's you know, book Joseph Campbell, like there's kind of real kind of like there's a lot written basically on about the beats that each of these stories has, and that is the Matrix to a T. Like it follows each and every single one of those beats. The beauty of Reloaded is it kind of like completely renders that ridiculous. And the entire point, the entire kind of last act revelation that you've been calling yourself the one. We as a movie have been referring to you as the one. Neo is, an anagram of one. Actually, like, there have been 6 of you. This is a cycle. We do hero journeys all the time, and it's always the same. That's so interesting to me, and it's a complete like unpicking of like this idea that one person will save the day, one person will kind of like step up and be the hero. The kind of I think about this a lot because like it's the older you get, like the more you realize that actually that's just not how the world works, and anything good that happens, anything that is achieved is done through kind of collective action and kind of it's kind of collective purpose. And again, I don't want to speculate on the filmmaker's motivations if that was the reason why, but like there is just something about like the way that Reloaded explodes the entire not just like the entire premise of the first film, but the entire premise of most Hollywood movies. It's just so fascinating to me. And that's just like one in a line of like incredibly like, to me, revolutionary things that the movie was doing. The fact that it can do it while delivering something as exciting as the freeway chase, aka one of the best things I've seen in an action film ever. To me, it's pretty remarkable. And like the kind of balancing act of those things is pretty astonishing to me.
Okay, we have to talk about the freeway scene now you brought it up.
Yeah.
That is its big selling point to me.
Yeah.
It is incredible. You can't watch that and think that's not good, because it's magic. And especially when you start reading about how they put that together. They literally built the highway or something. It's absolutely insane how they've done it. And everything you say, I totally agree with you. But the first time I ever saw this film, it made me so angry. And not in a good way. And
didn't you see it at midnight on release day?
Yeah, I went to a midnight showing a couple of days before it got released, because a cinema was above the bowling alley I worked in, and you're like, come and watch The Matrix. So I dragged a load of friends at 12 o'clock at night. I went, it's the sequel to The Matrix. It's just going to be full of shooting and fighting, and it's going to be brilliant, and bullet time. And there's no bullet time. I've let go of that, I think, now, because I think the directors, they created a monster with that.
Yeah,
and it got so lambasted in like Scary Movie and like the Max Payne films and computer games. It no longer felt original or fresh, and I think I've got no problem that went. I think it sometimes, it sounds ridiculous now, I think it goes over the top with its what are the words I'm trying to look? Explaining. Like the end bit with the architect with
Colonel Saunders.
Argo VSOV.
guy.
It's not until like you about 5 years ago that I actually sat down and listened to what he was saying, because the first time I was just like, what is this shit? what is going on? Where is the fighting? And I don't like the scene with the Merovingian in the restaurant. For some reason, that absolutely triggers me to be furiously angry. I'm just, come on, get to the good bits. But everything you say, I'm now like, oh yeah, I didn't like the dancing, but I can see a point of the dancing now. And it's the first time I've ever watched it, and I actually had a bit of fun today. Like the fighting is still incredible in this film. The one bit that gets a bit silly is the Agent Smith pylon.
That's the bit I don't like.
I didn't think it looked good then, and it certainly, I don't think, aged now. But Hugo Weaving and Keanu Reeves sell the shit out of it.
I don't think I like Agent Smith at all.
Really?
It's the thing for me. Yeah, I just don't.
I think he's a great bad guy.
I don't get him. I get what. Well, yeah. I just don't think I understand Agent Smith at all.
Can I give you my rebuttals to those things?
Yeah,
again,
of course.
This is like well practiced at the pub over the last 10 years or so. All right, so so first the Merovingian stuff. Like, I would agree that like the fact that it took me quite a few watches of this movie early on, like as a kid, to realize like how awesome the concept of that was. So like the idea that yes, the Matrix has existed for many iterations, and like a lot of the things that we consider myths, like vampires and ghosts, are actually kind of like hangers on from previous iterations of the Matrix. Just awesome. It's an amazing excuse to get a ghost in a Matrix movie. It's an amazing excuse to have vampires in a Matrix movie. But like,
Oh my God, they're ghosts.
yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
You know, so you know, I would say that like that stuff is like conceptually really interesting. It's maybe there's an argument to be made that like it could be kind of delivered in a bit more of an in your face way that kind of makes obvious without needing to kind of watch it 80 billion times as I have and go down 80 million hours worth of Wikipedia rabbit holes. Okay. The sort of like KFC dude at the end, again, I kind of that was something that was really, really parodied in the aftermath of this film, and I think Will Ferrell and Justin Timberlake. It's really
very funny,
and it lends itself so much to parody because it is so over the top. It took me a while to realize that I think like the intention of that, or maybe certainly like it's readable as kind of being a comment. The scene is readable as being a comment on like the way that like it's pretty pointed. The fact that the architect, that's his name, he you know, he resembles kind of our understanding of God, you know, white guy with a white beard kind of thing is like how we generally think about God, or how he's depicted in sort of our kind of culture. And the language he uses, the fact that it is so over the top and it's so kind of like, I don't know, it's just impenetrable. The language, it's so stuffy and so kind of like labyrinthine. Like it's really, to me, it's kind of like, it's kind of about the bureaucracy of like language and how like language by kind of traditional white gatekeepers who Wachowskis probably were encountering quite a lot in their travails in Hollywood. You know, they do like use all this language that's purposefully kind of like, you know, it's really, you know, it's just big words to kind of like intimidate you. And it worked. Yeah. Yeah. I feel quite intimidated by that scene. Yeah. But I understand like a lot of people bump up against that whole scene. I think it's maybe guilty of doing something that I think like is much more like, it's much less defensible in the third film, which is it's so committed to an idea and something it wants to express that maybe like it's kind of actually difficult to follow sometimes. So yeah, like I remember it took me a good while to understand like what is happening in that scene, and would it have benefited from like, in hindsight, would the scene have played better? Would the ending have worked more if like it was clearer? Wait, what did you just explain? Because I don't think the first time I watched it, I really understood that. Wait, there have been
I'm still
6
not sure
Matrixes.
I understand it.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty kind of like, even on this watch, like I had to remind myself why. Like, how did he stop the machines at the end? Like, there's a lot that isn't especially trackable about this movie because it wants you to play by its terms rather than kind of like spoon feeding you. There is no spoon, to use a Matrix hole.
I was not ready for that when I was younger. I wanted it to be spoon fed. Like,
yeah,
please just explain what's going on. But I've got better at that.
Yeah, and then I forget. Yeah, I mean, so basically, that there are a lot of things about this movie that like people understandably bump up against, but for me, I don't know, just like I can't. Oh, that was the third thing you mentioned about how like the fight scenes, like the first one, there seemed to be obviously there was bullet time, but they were kind of with this film verging more into kind of like CGI, like
slow-mo.
Yeah, and like the big, there's a name for it, like something brawl, where they have all the Agent Smiths kind of piling on Neo. Like it does, like I remember being kind of really disappointed at the time because I loved how real the fighting felt. Obviously, you know, real in quotation marks, but it felt grounded in a world we recognized in the first film. And I remember thinking like, why have they lent so far into sort of like computer imagery? Like the world no longer, it's got that green tint to it. Like the city is less like recognizable as a city. I felt like the first one like maybe was New York, or like, it just felt recognizable. Like the locations and the fighting. They felt tangible, they felt real. And I remember being really disappointed that I felt when I was a kid that they had made like a choice to kind of go with CGI, and there are obviously kind of big moments, like big chunks of the movie where everything you are seeing on screen is computer generated. I think like big parts of that fight scene, you know, a camera couldn't move like that. So of course it's all computer generated at a time when that was all really primitive in terms of that technology.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is purposeful. I don't know if it's an accident. But for me, like going back to that stuff now, there is an in-world reason why that stuff does look more uncanny. And it kind of works to me, kind of like, you know, the whole idea of the Matrix is when you accept the reality you're given, and then when you see, when it's like revealed that reality isn't real, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to how you saw it before. So there's more artifice to the city that they're in. There's more. It just feels less real and more simulated. And to me, like it kind of works in terms of the character's journey. And it kind of like the filmmaking style feels subjective to the character and to the audience. We recognize now that city is a computer generated city. It makes sense to me that we are now witnessing computer generated fights, and the line there is being blurred more. I don't know if that's what they did on purpose or whether they were just like, computers are cool, that saves us a lot of trouble. I don't know.
They probably did do it on purpose, I think. I don't know. I think for me, I guess I felt like the more explanation I got, the more I didn't understand so much of it. You know, like the more the movie explains, the more I think, well, what's the point of this? Like, what's the point of it? Why has everybody got guns? We know they're not real. We know they're pointless. Like, why have them? Like, why are you fighting? What is the point? You know, it's not real. Like, I don't know. It's the kind of, I guess the more I understood, the less I like bought into it, I guess.
Well, that was the first film. Like the world building and the rules of the universe are so perfect, and that is perfectly calibrated in the first film, where it's like you need the Matrix isn't real, but your brain thinks it is. So if you die in the Matrix, you die in real life, and it just like it seemed to make sense at the time that like guns, etc., etc. It's the world building and the sort of like mythology of it all, the rules of that universe gets a little wavier in the second film, and progressively as the kind of series goes on, I think it just becomes less of a, as the filmmakers become more concerned in sort of like, or more interested in like exploring the philosophic, like the philosophy of the Matrix and what it represents, they become a little bit more kind of like yeah, sure. Guns. I don't know. Like, don't worry about it. Like, they're not as like hung up on those things. And there are some moments where it sort of takes you out maybe a little bit. But I think it comes down to, and I kind of understand anyone falling on either side of this divide. Do you find do you find the philosophy of it all meaty and interesting enough that that it kind of subsidizes for the fact that like the rules aren't as kind of clear cut anymore? There's some cracks in it. Like, it's not making sense in the way that the first film was.
I like the philosophy a bit more, but I also like the rules. It's also in my head. I'm like, I like that you're explaining. I like it when movies explain things. I like understanding. I like knowing why things happen. But I also like it when they go, and the reason we told you this is because this happens, and it's not that fuzzy. I don't deal well, I guess, in the fuzzy grey areas of the rules changing, which I think is what happens. Which is probably why I have an issue with Reloaded, because it is better than I thought it was. But I think my main issue still stands is that I don't like the fuzzy bit. I don't like I don't like it breaking its own rules. Essentially, I think that's
I agree.
Where I'm at.
I agree with that. Today was the first time I enjoyed it in a long time, so I think that's a win on all accounts.
Do you think like your perception of this movie and how like, well, you know, sort of regardless of your opinion, I think everyone's everyone generally seems to be of the consensus that like it goes to weird places. It definitely doesn't double down. Has your appreciation or relationship with the film changed at all because the majority of sequels we get these days, now we are in the kind of like Marvel model of movie making. It's very kind of like it's on tracks. Like it's, you know, there's a formula. Like I've personally found that like probably one of the reasons why my appreciation for these movies has grown as it has is because like as things become more entrenched in hero's journey, more entrenched in sort of like a very, very rigid kind of template for what a movie looks like and what a sequel looks like. Now I'm just kind of, I think that's part of why like I appreciate the swings, even if like the swings made don't always kind of hit right.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And I think I do appreciate this movie more than that when I first watched it. And I am completely bored of superhero movies. Like I really am. And we watch a lot of them because they're the ones that have all the sequels.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just done. I think we've explained it as marveled out. I think is how I feel. So yeah, I think I do appreciate the attempts, like you say, even the swings that don't hit. Yeah, and even if it's not a movie that I'm going to sit down and go, do you know, I really fancy watching any of the Matrix again. I've got to be honest, but you know, I still appreciate, you know, the craft that goes into it and the thought behind it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Yeah,
still appreciate the Wachowskis as creatives. Because, you know, I do think they produce interesting things.
They always produce interesting things. Not everything they produce is good. We've recently watched Speed Racer. Yeah. And Jupiter Ascending is also one of theirs.
And then you get Sense8, which is incredible. I love it. So you know,
can't say they ever take the easy road.
Definitely not.
Yeah,
which you've got to respect as a filmmaker for them. What's been your most disappointing sequel? So not your worst sequel. We'll get to that in a second. But what is the most disappointing sequel? You went in big, came out low.
Gosh, that's a really tricky one. I mean, I think like in terms of like pure emotive reaction, I remember being so obsessed with Men in Black when I was a kid, and then the sequel, because it did kind of give you more of the same, but less good or less fresh, certainly, because it was a retread of the first film. I remember being quite disappointed with that, but I haven't gone back to that since. So maybe that's a better film than I remember.
No, it's not. It's rubbish. Just someone has picked that. I just want to point that out. That is rubbish. It makes me physically angry talking about Men in Black 2.
Okay, that makes me feel great. I think there's probably like there's something to be said for like Rise of Skywalker. I'm sure that's a film that has been referenced on this podcast a good number of times. Like, so I won't belabor the point too much, as I'm sure people have articulated their problems with it much better than I have. But or I will. Yeah, I don't know. I was so in on Star Wars even after Last Jedi, which you know, I thought was quite a bold movie. And I think my problem with sequels, to kind of zoom out a little bit, is like they are inherently kind of like pretty capitalistic. And you know, the sequels I love, like Reloaded, they kind of like find ways to justify their existence that isn't in a way where the primary focus isn't just like, how do we make more money? And the reason why the sequels that I dislike, like a lot of the kind of, as much as you can call like the Marvel movies sequels at this point, you know, I don't like filmmaking where it does feel like it exists to kind of like generate income for a lot of people who already have a lot of income. And I sort of feel like Rise of Skywalker is it kind of just like it's all, knowing what I know about like the film's production, having read the original script for that then got chucked out the window because it wasn't palatable in terms of keeping the Star Wars like empire running kind of long term. Empire being a pretty apt word. Like I to me, like Rise of Skywalker is like sequel making at its kind of most problematic, in terms of just like, you see where all the kind of, you can see the kind of disruption that's kind of taken place on that film, where loads of people have meddled with it to the point where creativity has taken a back seat, like, and the thing driving it is no longer like, we want to tell a really great story. I mean, I'm sure that is the intention for a lot of people who work on it, But yeah, the
No
final
one, no one
product.
plans to make a bad film, do they?
No one plans to make
No.
that film, no. But it was just it was really, really, really disappointing to me.
It was really obviously a movie made by committee rather than by vision, I think.
Yeah,
And,
totally. And
you know, and I think it definitely loses something in that.
yeah.
And I say that that's me being very gentle, because I literally shouted, "Oh, fuck off" at the end of that movie in the cinema. So, you know,
Dude, this is the thing, and it kind of goes back to like what I love about Reloaded. You know, The Last Jedi, again, I can understand why a lot of people didn't get on with that film, but it's like, you know, the thing that was interesting about The Last Jedi was, again, like Reloaded, it's like the most brilliant moment in that film is Rey is perhaps no one. And
Yeah.
isn't that exciting? Like you don't need
Absolutely.
to be like it's not a hero's journey anymore. Like it's like, and anyone anywhere can have the Force. Like it democratizes the idea of like being good and being a hero.
Yeah.
And that's just so much more interesting to me than where they kind of wound things back to at the end, where it's like, and her name is Rey Skywalker. It just like, just,
no.
yeah. So
All she had to do was just say, "It's just Rey."
yeah, that
You
would
know,
have been
that's
just
all
so
it needed to be.
perfect. That really, really would have, like that single line would have made the movie hit a lot better.
Yeah.
for me, but
Who are you? Nobody. And then uses the Force to bring something close to her.
yeah.
Cut to the end. That would have made up a lot of errors in that movie for me, because like you, I was hugely disappointed by it. Oh man, that film sucked. But Men in Black 2 also sucked. Didn't even have a good song. It was called Nod Your Head. Will Smith did it. It was terrible.
Nod your head, parentheses, the black
Dave
suits
gets-
come in, I believe, was the...
Nod your head.
Dave gets really, really angry about Men in Black 2.
This was the first time I really enjoyed you giving me that little singing excerpt there, Dave. This is the first time I've been on a podcast and been serenaded.
I do a lot of singing, and Rich tells me not to. My wife tells me not to.
It's not the singing, it's accents.
I'm not allowed.
Yeah, that's what you're not allowed
Are
to
you
do.
going to bust out some Rage Against the Machine, like, you know, true Matrix
Do you know-
style for the
do
end
you
of
know
this
what?
episode?
Maybe. I did enjoy the end of that. And at the end of... Shouldn't go back to Reloaded, but were you hyped when they played the Revolutions trailer at the end of Reloaded? Did that suck you back in for a second after your disappointing first watch? See, I'm bringing it back to disappointing
Yeah.
of Reloaded.
Oh, it definitely did. But also, I mean, I feel like I can't remember exactly how it went down, but they obviously play the credits. Rage Against the Machine comes on. Like, you could be showing me, like, you know, sort of like a video of someone, like, I don't know, just like doing their tax return or something. Stick Rage on the soundtrack, and I'm like, yeah, do those taxes. Like, I'm so amped. It's adrenaline in musical form.
Put another star on that review. Right, let's get
Brilliant.
on. What is, because this is a good one.
Oh, this
What
is
is
a
your
good one.
worst ever sequel?
This follows on quite nicely from when you asked me about disappointing, because, you know, sequels to be disappointing or to be the worst sequel, you know, I imagine a lot of people come on the show and answer this question. It's like they loved the first film, and then the second film, it was such a drop off. It got so many things wrong about that. I don't love the first iteration of the movie that I'm talking about the sequel of today. But this movie is just so astoundingly, I'm like loath to call anything bad, but like it is bad.
Oh, it's bad.
That's bad.
It's really bad.
Yeah. So my worst sequel is Green Street 2, or as it was known in America, Hooligans 2.
Or it's also known here, Green Street 2, Stand Your Place or Stand Your Ground.
Stand your ground.
Stand Your Ground.
yeah.
I think, I can't be sure, but I'm pretty sure legally you have to pronounce it as Stand Your Grand. It's okay, right. I should, for anyone who's coming to this unaware of the Green Street cinematic universe. So I don't know. Maybe one of you guys want. I mean, yeah. Do you? What's your relationship with Green Street before I explain it?
My brother went for a few years of buying me terrible films on DVD. So he bought me like Striptease, Dead or Alive, films like that, and eventually bought me Green Street. He's like, "You have to watch this. It's pretty bad, but it's good. It's got Elijah Wood. You love a Lord of the Rings in it." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds interesting." And then it's got Charlie Hunnam, who's a brilliant actor now, who sounds better when he's American than when he does an accent in his actual native country.
Yeah.
And it's a weird machine, old Green Street, because it is quite entertaining in places.
Yeah.
And there is a plot there, and there's also like levels of jeopardy, and you feel for the characters a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you get, and I didn't even know this was a thing today, Green Street 2. And then you get to this one, and only one of the side characters comes back, and they're in prison.
Oh, big time they are. Yeah.
Yeah. In America?
Well, this is one of the. This is one of the very, very There are so many kind of like big questions about this movie. All right, so Green Street, for anyone who's not aware, Green Street is a movie about Elijah Wood stars as an American journalism dropout who, after kind of like unfairly being booted out of college, whatever they call
Harvard
it over there,
is, yeah.
Harvard, he sort of decides to get away from it all and comes to England and sort of accidentally becomes sort of ingratiated in like a football kind of hooliganism firm.
Yeah.
GLCs, they call themselves.
That's right. Yeah. And the I'm a West
GSCs. Green Street. I don't know.
Yeah.
Carry on. Sorry.
So basically, like I'm, as a little aside, I'm a West Ham fan. I think my like
Brilliant
relationship with this movie was like, why? I remember being really intrigued by it because I was like,
why us?
West Ham have allowed their like, they've obviously kind of given permission for filming and they've given permission for the West Ham name and all this kind of thing. And it's like, guys, why? This is such a bad advert for your club. And anyway, so Elijah Wood at the center of this kind of big, sort of rivalry between these two set of supporters, all ends with this big fight. And you would have thought like, okay, there's absolutely no need for a sequel, especially after the first film didn't do particularly well, like in terms of reviews and all that sort of thing. But this, of course, was the era of like, we were still in the midst of this sort of DVD boom at the minute where it was very easy for movies to kind of like turn a profit because people were just buying DVDs in their droves, and it didn't need a theatrical release anymore. You could just make so much money. So they sort of set aside, I think Lionsgate was the studio, they set aside $1 million for a Green Street sequel. And this the the plot involves very rooted in reality, I believe. There's all the people from the big fight at the end of the first Green Street, they're all in prison. The same prison, obviously, and they
obviously, because that's what you'd do.
You'd stick the people who just had a massive fight in a contained area. I'm sure that won't lead to any problems. So basically, bit of a bloody problem. There's only too many people in the jail. When it happens, so the authorities are like, well, we're overpopulated. What do we do? They decide to they're gonna have to let some of the prisoners go. How do we decide? Let's have a five-a-side football match between the two firms. Winner gets their freedom. That's never happening. That's not a thing. And I'm so upset that they would make a film that suggests that that's a thing.
It's like the governor of the prison, he's reading through a list and he's like, we can't let this guy's in for rape, isn't he? We can't let him out. We're like, you can't let any of them out. What are you talking about? It's just like, oh well, you're all murderers, but you won a football match, so out you go.
The problem is your synopsis makes it sound much better than it actually is.
Yeah.
Well,
at least that makes it sound fun.
I've thought a lot about that synopsis because, like, on one hand, I think if I ever sort of like went to jail for, I don't know what my crime would be, but like, if I ever went to jail, on one hand, I think I'd be sort of like very much eaten alive, like would not last the night. But on the other hand, I am quite good at five-a-side football, so maybe I could earn my freedom. So I've thought about this a lot. The Green Street 2 comes up a lot in my thoughts, but it's very bizarre there, and for some reason most of the cast are American, putting on like really bad Cockney accents, and then
there's a lot of Dick Van Dyke in there, isn't there?
Loads. And then as Rich rightly points out, for some reason they didn't film in a UK prison. They don't even make an attempt to make it look like it. They're all wearing like Prison Break style, like orange jumpsuits in clearly an American prison. The whole thing is just bonkers. I don't understand what's going on in this movie.
Also, you can just tell everyone's struggling with the heat. They continuously look hot, and they've got fans blowing everywhere.
There's one point where they're like, "Oh, why'd you come to church?" And then someone goes, "Oh, it's got air conditioning." I was like, "That's not a thing," you know. Like it's the opposite. It's got heating.
Yeah. It's also, it kind of falls into the same like, I reckon if it falls into the same habit of the first film, in which like it pads out its runtime by basically someone explaining something in supposed Cockney rhyming slang, and then having to explain what it means to another character. Like there's a bit in the first film where he's like, God, I'm gonna get this wrong. He's like, there's a bit in the first film where he's like, it's not this, but it's the equivalent of like, yeah, that's a nice Bunsen burner, nice little learner. Like, just whereas someone has to spend like an extra 15 seconds or so just like explaining what he just said. Just say the thing, just say the normal thing. Also, in most of the sort of examples of that, it's just not, I've Googled it. It's not an actual phrase. That's not Cockney rhyming slang. No one's saying these things.
Oh, we're talking about wasted time. The woman talks about shaving her pubes for 5 minutes at one point. I at that point I was like, you're struggling to get to 90 minutes here, aren't we? This is frankly embarrassing.
It's weird that it's only an hour and a half and it felt so long.
When I turned it on,
Yeah.
when I turned it on, it was only an hour and a half. I was so relieved. I was like, thank Christ, this is not going on for 2 hours. Thank you.
But then an hour in, I was looking at my watch going, how long left? I feel like I've been watching this for a week.
That's why you got to stand your ground, Rich. That's the meaning of the title. It's like, come on, you can make it through.
I didn't see the football bit coming. As in, that's what they were going to have to do to escape. I knew there was going to be a football match, like Mean Machines, the kind of thing. I didn't think they were actually getting released. I thought that is bonkers.
That is one of the. Can you imagine if like that's actually like how the UK kind of decided?
It's like the Hunger Games kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't put it past this government. They'll probably watch this and think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
You want to stay in the country? Come on, let's get you on the football pitch.
I can literally hear like, Suella, whatever, the absolutely horrible woman being like,
yeah.
To stay in the country, you must stand your ground. Football matches to decide who. It's really just, yeah. Oh.
I'm sorry, your team has finished bottom of their group. Off to Rwanda with you.
Yeah. Oh God. We're so broken. Our country's so broken.
I've got to ask, how did you even come across Green Street 2? Did you watch the first one and thought, I want more of that?
Oh, at the time I was working in a little known video retail shop called Blockbuster Video. And it really did
You're
kind
on the
of
chosen
like
ones.
Yeah. That's my hero's journey. So I basically like I think I really, really like hated but enjoyed how much I hated the first film. And it was pretty low stakes. The film came in, I think I could just like you got free rentals. So I think I was like, I know I need to hate watch this. I'm not really even then, I'm certainly not now someone who would waste my time that way, but I wasn't even really back then, but I just felt like I owe it to myself to see where this goes, because I can't imagine why they've made a sequel to this. And Jesus, it was bad.
I couldn't believe it was made in 2009.
Yeah,
I thought it was more like 1999. Like it's so badly. It's like a bad episode of a TV show.
Yeah, it's like a pilot,
really poorly made.
It really is.
Yeah. In fact, I did message Dave when I was watching it last night, going, when we were in uni, we made a documentary about football hooligans, and I was like, you know, our crappy documentary made at uni, it looks better than this.
There's one scene in that thing from uni when you just told me to swear as much as I can.
Yeah.
And literally that was this film.
That was pretty much this film, yeah.
But it didn't stop here. They've done a Green Street 3. Have anyone seen that?
I haven't. No, I knew it existed, but shall I look up the synopsis? I don't even know what that's about.
I've read all about it today.
Let me guess. Right,
you?
they
Of course I have.
let me guess. So like they decided to is it like beheadings or something if you lose a game of football or something like that? They've
No. You'll never, it's this one's called Green Street 3, Never Back Down. That's what the third one's called.
Sure.
So stand your ground, never back down.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Spice Girls song already.
It does, doesn't it? It's got nothing to do with the second one. It's got no cast from the second or the first one. It's got Scott Adkins from recently John Wick 4.
John Wick
Well, I
4,
love
yeah.
Scott.
Lots of other,
okay.
yeah, a lot of great fighting films, and it's about West Ham are in it again, and they fight the Millwall lot again. But he was once the leader of the Green Street Elite, but then he goes to live for a quiet life in Scotland. But his brother also stays in the firm and gets killed. Then Scott goes pretty much undercover back to the Green Street Elite to find out who killed his brother. And it turns out, you never guess, it was a Millwall fan who was also apparently the head of the police or something. So, spoilers for everyone if you're watching Green Street 3.
It sounds better already.
Well, it's got Scott in it, and I think he's a really good martial artist.
Scott's phenomenal, but like in that situation, like where either you're not accommodating Scott's amazing ability to kind of like do his kind of martial arts stuff, because why would a bloke who spends most of his time in the pub, as these kind of firms do, why would they be good at like kung fu?
Oh, they explain that he teaches it to kids.
Okay, fair enough. I stand my ground. I stand corrected.
So, worst bit of Green Street 2? Anyone? Go.
All of it? Like, literally all of it.
It's got to be a football match, isn't it?
Yeah, the football match is terrible. It is terrible.
I just can't believe that anyone involved with it has actually watched football ever. Yeah. Maybe football's just really hard to do like on screen, because like you never see a good iteration of it. Like, yeah, it's. Has there been a good football movie? I don't know.
No, they tried hard with those goal films.
Oh,
Yeah,
Remember,
no,
there's
Ted Lasso's the
a trilogy of
best.
them.
Yeah.
Ted Lasso's the best we've come to a decent football movie, and even that looks silly.
Yes, it does.
But yeah, I mean, I love it, but the football bit of it does look silly. No, I think you're right. I don't think there is. I can't think of anything where it looks. You can't capture it, I guess. But yeah, I mean, the football bit. There's the bit where his wife gets kidnapped.
I forgot about the kidnapping. Yeah,
It's a really weird bit where like the kidnapper's like gonna like is just trying to rape her essentially, and he says something about, I always want to know if gingers are really dirty or something like that, and I was like, but you're ginger. Like,
he is.
Like, what are you talking about? It's just so like some of the dialogue is just awful. And none of it is. It's incredibly violent without at any point being in any way menacing. There's some extreme violence, whilst all the time you're watching it going, but this is boring. This feels like such low stakes. Like, I don't know. It's weird.
Is it because of the whole?
Weird, really weird.
There was a big. The Football Factory was really good, wasn't it? That's quite a good film on football hooliganism. And then there's another one called The Firm that's okay. And then Green Street did pretty well.
There was sort of like a trend, wasn't there, for football hooliganism?
It was a weird time. Cass is another one, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was sort of late 90s, early noughties, wasn't there, where it was almost kind of cool for like football hooliganism was kind of cool again briefly, like reliving the 80s kind of thing.
But why is it always West Ham? Al, what have West Ham done to?
Well, I just love the fact that like obviously the first one does not paint West Ham. If you're just like a cinema goer looking for a new club to support, I don't think it's winning you over to West Ham. I love how after that film they were like, okay, but you promised to make us look good in this second film if we give you the rights to the club. And then like the third film, I don't know what the conversations were for these things, but I don't know. I think there is genuinely like there are like West Ham does have a history of this stuff, so there's an accuracy to it. Like it's a problem that they have,
especially with Millwall.
Yeah. I mean, it's not plucked out of thin air, but like it's just the question is just like, why would you? How were they able to use why did West Ham like sign over the rights? Like why aren't West Ham like reduced to kind of being the equivalent of a Richmond FC, like it is in
Yeah.
or whatever.
Do you think they need to get rights though? Is that something that filmmakers need to worry about when making films of this kind of caliber?
I think you'd have to use the badge and stuff, wouldn't
Oh
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think you'd have to say West Ham. I think you could do that because there's a place rather than a club, isn't it? Like, but I think the badge you'd have to get permission.
I just feel like in the sort of like, I don't know, if they hadn't have struck some sort of deal, presumably there would have been like a sort of like, the filmmakers would have left themselves open for some sort of like lawsuit where it's like, well, you've like you've like associated the club with hooliganism in a movie with an international title that's literally called Hooligans, and you've therefore like lost us X amount in potential earnings.
Yeah.
You could probably argue that it's realistic. I guess you could there are West Ham firms.
Realism
or
obviously
there
being
were.
a big part of the Green Street franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking from a libel perspective, you could probably say, well, it's factual. It's based on reality, I guess. Are they in Football Factory? Are they West Ham as well? Or
No,
are they
I think they're
Chelsea. I think, aren't they?
I
They
can't remember.
Chelsea?
But in this film, the Chelsea fans are all neo-Nazi, bald-headed.
I was going to say a lot of swastikas on Chelsea
on the
fans
Chelsea
in this
fans.
movie.
Yeah.
Next question for you: what has been the sequel that has rebuilt your confidence in like a franchise? So maybe the first 1, 2 weren't great, but then you watched one down the line and it was like you're like, oh, that's much better than I thought it was going to be.
God, it's a real question, actually. I mean, just because it's so fresh in my mind, like the only thing, well, I mean, Force Awakens did reinvigorate my love for a series that I thought I had kind of parked in terms of like they've told the stories they can tell here, and everything they seem to be doing now seems to be making that universe feel smaller rather than bigger. We all know where that ended up because they've already ranted about Rise of Skywalker. Interested as an aside, like, that was an interesting period for the kind of like, Jurassic World, Force Awakens. They're all kind of like, it was a particular kind of reboot formula that was put in place with those two films that got tired really quick, but pretty interesting. In terms of like a movie where like, I don't think I loved the first one, an insane amount, but then the sequel, like, in a kind of like complete opposite to the usual trend for sort of like diminishing returns, a sequel that blew me away. Have you guys seen Pearl?
Not yet, no.
I haven't. No.
Really, really, really good. The first movie is like X. So these two movies by filmmaker Ty West, who's a horror movie maker. Yeah, first one's like really serviceable. It's fine. It's like a good kind of like, it's just like a fun sort of like horror movie that's like it's set in the 70s. These kids go to this like farm to shoot a porno, and it's about the making of a kind of exploitation flick, and then it's also shot like an exploitation flick, and it's fine. It's good. It's like a good watch, but like I wasn't really craving a sequel. But then Pearl, this movie that I think they must have shot back to back to come out so quickly together. Pearl is like one of the best horrors of the last decade in my mind. It's Mia Goth, who's having a really great moment at the minute. It's her character from she plays like an old woman she plays two roles in X, but she plays like an older woman in one of the roles is an older woman in X, and Pearl is the story of the old woman as a young woman kind of aspiring to be a Hollywood starlet. And it's again, like X was shot, it was set in the 70s, so it was shot like a 70s horror. Pearl is set in a kind of like post-war sort of 1940s era, so it's shot like Wizard of Oz. It's shot like a 1940s movie, and it's beautiful. It's so weird. It's so just like Technicolor. It's just like a really, really, really unique horror movie. So I guess that's what's coming to mind for that question. But I don't know.
It's a weird time to talk about that because today they announced the third one. Maxine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. Like I could say at the beginning at X, I wouldn't have necessarily thought I needed a franchise out of this thing. But I mean, Pearl, so good. Yeah.
Because the only reason we haven't gone near Pearl Because one reason we're both rubbish with horror films.
Yeah. We're both
We're wimps,
big, scaredy
massive
cats. Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it's a prequel. I don't have to worry about it. But now they've made it into this trilogy. I'm like, we're going to have to watch these films now, Rich.
Yeah, we are.
But I hear Pearl's really entertaining and quite fun in a way.
Yeah,
Back that up.
it's really, really fun, and just really, it's the way it incorporates like sound and music. Like, it's just like I don't want to give too much away, but there's like a moment early on. You know how sometimes there's just movies that like you'll have like a moment in like the first kind of 15-20 minutes, and you're just like, okay, I'm in. Like that's so there's like a sort of scene in which Mia Goth's character kind of like serenades this scarecrow in the sort of field that she's the farm that she's kind of growing up on, and what happens next is just so interesting and so like unsettling. It's it kind of goes from there. It's really, really good fun, really good.
Okay. She's on a bit of a hot streak at the moment, isn't she, Mia Goth? And such a interesting actress. The stuff she puts out and the things, and everyone sometimes thinks her accent's not real, but is she British, isn't she?
She's British, but she speaks in a really interesting accent that's like quite high, quite like delicate, and quite like well spoken. But I don't know how you describe it, but it's really interesting.
She can flip from being quite normal to crazy in a real split second, which is a talent for any actress, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a real talent.
I was able to do that coming out of Rise of Skywalker as well, I found out.
So you really enjoyed Force Awakens. You quite enjoyed Last Jedi, and then you hated Rise of Skywalker. How do you feel now about what they're doing with their movies and the TV series, just out of interest?
Well, I really like Andor, so it's possible for me to kind of like remain plugged into the Star Wars universe, if you like. Where I sort of like worry about it going, and I feel like it kind of potentially sometimes verges on, is like I don't like the type of sequel making now where it's almost like it's hurrying to get to the next sequel, and kind of the thing they're built in a way where you're not really supposed to appraise what you just watched. You're supposed to kind of like, you're watching them as a piece in the kind of puzzle towards the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I do find it like, just like it's just too capitalistic. It's too nakedly, I know, like, let's face it, all movie making is a business. It's all about making money, but like there needs to be some marriage between like this being like a story that we want to tell, instead of like the kind of primary motivating factor being like, well, we just want to set up extra sequels, extra spin-offs, extra kind of like, we just want to expand the sort of litany of projects that you're going to have to watch. All that stuff then becomes kind of like homework, and sort of there's some Star Wars projects where for me it's just like it's like homework a little bit. And maybe if I did the homework and I sort of like stopped the episode every 5 minutes stopped the movie every 5 minutes to look up, okay, who's that supposed to be? Like, it'd be great, but it's servicing kind of like a mega fan and it's kind of the kind of reward of watching it is not like, and this isn't just about Star Wars anymore. This is across the field. Certainly, it's like an effect of the storytelling brought in by Marvel. The kind of thrill of it, seemingly, is like one of recognition. You know who that is, and it's kind of patting you on the back for getting the reference or getting the allusion to that character or this event in the timeline. And to me, that's, I don't know, I'm quite traditional. I just want to go through, I want to feel something with a character, and I don't know. So
you're right. There is a lot of that at the moment, isn't there? There's a lot of kind of like just dropping people in. So someone who's a massive fan can go, oh, that guy from that obscure comic book that I read 10 years ago. You know, that kind of...
That's the character from Rebels. I was like, I haven't watched all that. Or Clone Wars, I'm afraid.
It's not just Star Wars and Marvel that do that, though. Like, we talked about Space Jam Legacy the other day, Dave, didn't we? And that's full of it. Yeah. It's full of, like, even so much so there's, like, it's a kid's movie, and there's, like people from A Clockwork Orange in it. You're like, who is this for? Like, who is like, this is just for people to go, oh, I recognise that person. Like, you know, like, why? Like, it's too much. Like, but you're right. It's just like Warner Brothers going, look at all the intellectual property we own.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your dream sequel?
So my dream sequel, I kind of struggled with this when you asked because I just like with very rare exceptions, for the most part, like a story is only ever diminished by it being extended, and like I don't know, you guys would be a better kind of arbitrator of this. I'd be really interested in like the number of sequels that are like considered good versus bad, because the percentages.
Oh, there are yeah. It's probably about 10% good to bad ratio, I'd say. So 10% good and 90% maybe not so good.
Yeah. So I kind of felt like, oh God, well, which movie have I loved that didn't get expanded upon that I would, I would risk giving a sequel to and then sort of like continuing, and I don't want to diminish like a story I loved. So yeah, kind of I ended up going with Edge of Tomorrow because I love that movie. And I think it kind of did not perform brilliantly at the box office. So it kind of got, I mean, I was working again at Blockbuster when that movie came out and then came out on DVD, and it performed so badly at the box office that they were trying to give it they were kind of sort of surreptitiously trying to give it a new title. I remember when it came in, it was Live, Die, Repeat in big words on the cover.
Yeah.
And then
That's the name of the comic it's based on, or the graphic novel. So that was the original name, is Live, Die, Repeat.
So because I remember there was something it was based on. Maybe this was the sort of, I think it was a Japanese book or something originally. Like there was some sort of product originally that was called All You Need Is Kill or something like that. And I just remember thinking that's such an intriguing title. Like I would hand over my money to see anything with that name on. Edge of Tomorrow is pretty bland as titles go, and you can sort of see the sort of studio think of like, well, we need something that sounds like a title. But Edge of Tomorrow could literally apply to anything, and it's kind of applicable to this in terms of like it being a time loop movie. You're constantly on the edge of tomorrow, but like it just sounds like generic movie title generator sort of fodder. So so I really like this movie, and I picked it because like I feel like in terms of like the world building of that story, there's more to explore. I picked it in terms of like the kind of concept of like, the repeating nature. Like that movie itself was kind of like quite self-aware in terms of it talking about like, or seeming to talk about like video games and sort of like time loop movies themselves. And I just think there's like conceptually there's interesting stuff to be done in that field still. So I don't think Tom Cruise would come back, but
do you not think? I think this is still bubbling.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think they're still trying to find a way of cracking this.
Really?
Chris McQuarrie has once in a while just dropped hints that this might happen. We had Chris Hewitt on this podcast from Empire, and he briefly mentioned this when he talked about dream sequels, and he said Chris McQuarrie once said to him, "Yes, we think we might have cracked the angle," or something along those lines.
That's
exciting. I never rule this one out. I think it's definitely got a cult following now. It's definitely once you watch it, you realize how brilliant it is, and you're like, why did I not go and see that on the cinema kind of film? That must have been great on the big screen.
Yeah, you can sort of tell because it's kind of since release, it's made a lot of money. Like, so it was. I think it's opening weekend. It made like $28 million, which is not great for a $178 million budget.
Big budget,
but it's made $370 million worldwide. So it has kind of made its money back essentially. But I think a lot of that has been, like you say, like rewatches, like people coming to it late and watching it on DVD rather than.
I think they got the marketing wrong for it when they came out. Like you said,
I think so,
Edge of Tomorrow is such a nothing name, and you are correct. The original name for it is All You Need Is Kill. I can see kind of why they think of that, because when I think Edge of Tomorrow, I think Edge of Darkness. I think the BBC series.
I'm hearing the Lady Gaga song.
Yeah,
I'm on the edge of glory.
You don't think of this film, do you?
I always thought it was called Live, Die, Repeat.
Oh, really?
I didn't realise it was called Edge of Tomorrow, and so it's come up. Yeah, like Dave said, it's come up before, and I think I was like, I don't know what that film is. What's that film? And it was like, oh no, I have seen it.
Live, Die, Repeat. Is it it's certainly more macho title. Is it a better title, do you reckon?
I don't know. It stands
describes
out
what
more,
happens
I
in the
think.
film a bit better.
Yeah, yeah,
True.
yeah.
It's cooler.
It does.
Live, die, repeat.
I don't know. I don't know if it's better, but it's stuck in my head. I thought that was what the title of the movie was. So, An Edge of Tomorrow, yeah, it does kind of feel a bit like an AI wrote it. You know, that's kind of...
Yeah.
Would you have Tom Cruise back in a sequel? Have you ever thought about where would they take the story?
To me, like Emily Blunt, it seems to be like the character who, well, I think Cruise, because obviously, like, Cruise had a real sci-fi, like, little spell there where
He did, yeah.
he was in movies like Oblivion, was it?
Yes, he was, yeah.
And he seemed to be sort of like exploring this genre and this type of movie a fair bit. And I think kind of like he's been doing the Mission Impossible movies for forever, but like I think like the groundswell of love around those films has kind of has really grown in the time since Edge of Tomorrow. And I feel like putting him in a world where it's like by definition it's going to involve quite a lot of a lot of CGI, like because you're creating these worlds around them. What people go to now for Tom Cruise between the Mission movies and Top Gun Maverick is like, we want to see part of, like, he's a great actor, but you also kind of want, he's really doing the stunts and all that kind of thing. And I think like people wouldn't necessarily get what they want from coming to an Edge of Tomorrow sequel from Tom Cruise at this point. I mean, I'd love to see it. And if Chris McQuarrie's making it, then, obviously those two like work together on everything. So
yeah,
I'd love to see it. But I feel like, Emily Blunt is so cool. She's just such an absolute hero. And I sort of feel like, like that would be the kind of route that I would expect them to go down, sort of building out that character more and sort of like what happens when, I don't know, like obviously it's been a while since I watched the movie, so I don't know exactly what my kind of like proposed narrative would be for it, but like, typically the way you kind of do alien invasion sequels is the first invasion failed, they're coming back and they're coming back with reinforcements. That's tends to be the way they tend to do these things. And it'd be interesting to see how they would approach it, and I'd be really curious to know what Macquarie's angle is. Yeah. But I don't know.
This might not mean anything, but Doug Lyman's IMDb listing has Live, Die, Repeat as an in development project. So
I bet that's been there for a while.
Yeah,
I imagine it probably has. Because he's doing the Roadhouse movie, isn't he?
Oh,
Doug Liman. Yeah.
They'd have to do that loop thing again, but the premise of that, the loop was a happy accident in the plot. So it'd be weird if it kind of happens to them again.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Do you have an idea of what you'd want a sequel to do? Have you got a...
Yeah,
just that the aliens come back and Emily Blunt cuts them down again.
It's a bit out there. So basically, after the events of the first film, a lot of the aliens died, but a lot of them were captured as well. And they've been put in this prison, but the prison's only bloody overpopulated. But the authorities... Alien football match.
I was like,
winners go free.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Sold. Macquarie's like, God damn it, how did he guess? How did he know?
Yeah. By God, you've done it
Brilliant.
again, Ron Howard. For a minute, that started off really strong, though, Al.
There are honestly worst ideas, including Green Street 2.
Those were Al Horner's Unequal Sequels. Last week, I said it was the perfect hat trick, right? And this week, I think we've had another perfect hat trick. Controversial best sequel.
Oh, it's all right.
Absolute toilet worst sequel. And an incredible choice for dream sequel. I mean, it's just getting better and better.
I came out of that episode just bemused a little bit because Al is so convincing.
Yeah.
He put such a good argument in
for Matrix Reloaded as best sequel. I still don't agree with him. I'm sorry. I know they're his.
I don't
reasons.
now. I've had time away from him, but in the episode, I was with him, and everyone knows I hate that movie.
True. Yeah, you've have strong feelings, but
yes.
You know what movie it is okay to hate? Green Street 2.
What a puddle of piss.
Whoa, that was... I mean, one, I never knew it existed. And two, oh, it's terrible. It's genuinely... It's not even made for TV. Like, terrible. It's worse than that. It's not even bargain bin in Tesco's 99p DVD bad. It's like GCSE student film level bad. It's
awful. Made for a very specific audience. I would say those audience are idiots.
Yeah, you're probably right.
If you can sit down and think, oh, I really like Green Street 2, or let's go and have a good old punch up now. Let's get down to the pub and have a good old punch up. Let's go watch some football. Let's go and get the firm together and smash some glasses over some other football fans' heads. Let's have a good time.
I would say, if you love Green Street 2, then, I mean, don't let us know. Just go and get some help.
Yeah. If you like Green Street 2, you probably like Green Street 3, so which we haven't watched yet.
No, I don't want to.
Just wait until someone picks that, Rich.
And then
just wait.
Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, whatever it's called. A great choice. It is a good choice. I would like a sequel for that. You know, when I've watched it a few times, so I really like it. And every time I watch it, I think, it's just this needs a franchise. It needs a franchise. It needs to be at least a trilogy.
I think there's a trilogy in there somewhere. It would work as really nicely as a trilogy as well. Yeah,
I think so.
Well, it may happen. That is the one on my list that I think might happen more than most others we've talked about.
Okay.
I think Tom Cruise and Chris McQuarrie and Doug Liman, I think they've still got some ideas and that might happen. But, man, that was a great episode. You know, just listening to Al speak, because I'm such a big fan of Script Apart podcast, that I think everyone should go. And if you're interested in writing, his guests are phenomenal. Like,
oh god, he's got incredible guests. Incredible.
Damon Chazelle's been on there, Mike Flanagan, David Chase from Sopranos, David Copey, who wrote Jurassic Park. You know, Paul Feig's been on there. I mean, the names go on and on. And Al's got such a calming voice. I find
it's such a good podcast.
He could talk me into being in a cult kind of thing. That's Al's voice.
Yeah.
Drink the Kool-Aid. Okay.
There you go.
Go check it out. And he's a great writer. He's written for lots of people, Guardian, Empire, lots and lots of people. He's brilliant. Really enjoyed spending our time with Al. And thank you, Al, for giving us your time. We know you're a very busy man, so I really appreciate that, squeezing us in.
If you really liked listening to this episode with Al and you want a bit more, then get yourself over to anotherslice.com/unequal sequel, where for just $2.99 a month you can have a sequel to all of our interview episodes, including this one. And the sequels are great. I'm not going to lie, we've really stepped up the game this season with the sequels. They're really very good. But also, it's not just sequels to these episodes you get over there. You also get our Disenfranchised series and our Box Set Mentality series. So you're basically getting 3 extra podcasts. I mean, it's pretty good value, really, for $2.99 a month.
Bargain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But, you know, if that's not your thing, just get along and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the auto-download button on your pod player of choice. You know, give us a little review. 5 stars would be lovely. We'd really enjoy that. And if you want to go a step further, get yourself on social media and tell people that we're the best podcast around. You know, get everyone to listen. We're at Unequal Sequel on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to get in touch with us, tell us what you thought of Al's picks. Tell us if you like Green Street 2, and we can get you some medical attention. Drop us an email, unequalsequel@hotmail.com.
Lovely. Agree. If you like Green Street 2, we will find professional help for you. There's no shame in that. Well, there is a bit of shame, actually. Lots of shame. Good job, Rich. Well done as ever. Smashed it.
Thanks, mate.
You've got a real talent, and I'm really glad we're putting it to use now. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the past episodes. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you're new, hopefully go back to the back catalogue. We've got over 100 now episodes. There's a lot, big fat catalogue.
Yeah.
So enjoy all them. I've got nothing else to say, Rich, so I think I'm just going to say bye. So I'm going to say bye. So bye, and then I'm going to let him say bye.
Bye!
And then I'm going to say see you next week, the sequel to this week's episode. And just, stay healthy, stay happy. See you next one. Bye.
I really hope we haven't upset loads of Green Street 2 fans
If they are, they're gonna like bottle us, or
Yeah.
I wonder if they're West Ham fans or if they're
Maybe.
Millwall fans.
I don't know, but yeah. Sorry if you are a Green Street 2 fan, but also I'm 6'6" and 3 foot wide, so bring it on.
Yeah. Also, I'm 6'7".
Dave, aren't you 5'5"?
I'm 5'5.5".
Oh,
Fuck
okay.
you.
All right.